Mert, I want to come back to something that you said, because we keep talking about the consumer and what they're telling us. What are you learning about the consumer through your platform? Because you're seeing what they're choosing. Are you able to go in and look at that data on the back end and say, 90% of consumers are picking salmon pink, which I really hope that's not the case, but just for that example, like what is it that you can start to see? Is there information in there that you can share with the builders or that you can share with us today?
Yeah, so I think the biggest insight is actually aligning with what Chris is saying, that upfront they are very interested in spending time and self-selecting into the styles that they like, self-selecting into the lifestyles that they like, and focusing on that. Yeah. There's a lot of variation across the consumers in terms of what they may ultimately like in terms of a furniture style or what kind of living style they might be bringing to a home. But they appreciate the fact that there are some curated design packages that are available to them, as opposed to, as Chris said, looking at like thousands and thousands of options and going through toggles and trying to see what ultimately may work for them. I mean, building something piece by piece might be easy for a lot of the designers that we have in the room, but for somebody who's a consumer who doesn't have an interior design background, right? They don't necessarily know what works well, what combination is going to work well. So being able to offer those packages, those personalities that they can subscribe to, they can self-select, becomes a huge part of their home buying process. And it's also the first steps of creating that emotional connection that we talked about too, because they are now not just picking any home in a community, they are picking a very particular home that is designed for them from the get-go.
Wonderful. And so as you're creating those multiple versions for them, is there some sort of, are you seeing consistency throughout different rooms? Or are they really, they're just out there like, show me everything that's possible? Or are things starting to streamline? I guess what I'm really trying to ask is it easier as they continue to go through the rooms to give them things that they're gonna like sooner? Or is it really like, let's keep exploring. Which way does that lean?
It is the former. So that's the behavior that we are observing, right? So there is obviously small changes that you can do along the journey, but that's how a consumer shops as well. That's why I mentioned Netflix and Amazon models. You kind of have an idea about what you want. You start there, and then you might see slightly different options available that you can pick from. But kind of optimizing around the consumer's journey of, okay, out of the 4 big things, this is the one that I like, and then going in there and then kind of exploring options within that specific bundle is the behavior that we are observing, and we are building our products to be able to support that kind of consumer use case too.
Beautiful.
What actually works best for us on this is in this room here, if you have a cancellation and you don't do design packages or palettes, one of the first questions that you'll ask is, what selections did the buyer pick? Yeah. How awful are they, and how much are we going to have to discount to apologize for their bad design taste? Like, that was a very common question. You'd say, oh gosh, the tile in this house is awful, or the cabinets are awful, or the countertops are awful. When I have interior palettes like we do now, my question is never how ugly is the house, because I know every single design was professionally done and they all look amazing. So it's no longer a discount game. It's let's get it out onto the market and get it priced right to sell.
That is such a good point to make.
Saves a lot of pricing questions.
So not only are you removing a barrier for the consumer, a fatigue point for the consumer, but you're also saving yourself if something goes array later down the road, right?
Well, we actually joke about it. It's called the Great New Home Remodel. So, I mean, if you think about it, if a buyer walks through the door and says, oh, we love this, but we hate the cabinets that the previous buyer chose, well, oftentimes, depending on how desperate you are to sell that home, you will price out the cost to remodel that brand new house. Yeah. But if you know that every single interior design palette is professionally done and you sell it properly as these are the trends and the styles that are in today, then you're not having to go back and remodel a brand new house.
Great point, Chris. Very good point. So I want to look into the future a little bit. We've got about 10 minutes left, so if anybody has questions, get them ready, because I'm coming out to you guys here in a minute. But I want to take a second, and I'm coming back to you first, Chris. if you were to predict, or if you're sort of looking forward into the future, I don't want to go any further than like 5 years because that's hard to grasp. So like 3 years, 4 years, 5 years out, where would you say the consumer expectations are going to be?
Yeah, I love this question because ECI Lasso and Lavi and all this company asked me that same question this morning. What do you see in 5 years? And I said, everything that we're talking about today that seems so far out of reach for most, or too much work, or yes, it's cool, but can I really do it, is going to be the norm.
Yep.
And I said, in the 70s, having a microwave put inside your house was not normal. But could you imagine selling a brand new home today without a microwave? You could not, right? In 5 years, we're going to look back and say, this is the way that we do things. Like, we may look back and say, we could never imagine a finished inventory home with pictures that wasn't staged.
Yeah.
Like, that should be the new norm. We couldn't imagine not having an online design center because that should be the way that it works. Unfortunately, we just take a really long time to do things. COVID, one positive thing about it is that it did force technology for most builders. The question is going to be how much of that technology gets pulled back because budget cuts or whatever it may be. Fortunately for all of us is that the technology is a lot more affordable today than what it ever was. But you're going to see this is going to be the norm. Virtual design centers are going to be the norm. Actually, the whole buy online thing I think is still, you can move a car from place to place. If I'm buying a house, I want to know who's my next door neighbor because I want to know if they have an annoying dog. Or if I have a 2-story house, I want to look out the back window and say, hey, does the person behind me have crap in their yard that I don't want to look at forever? Like, I think that's the challenge with buy online more than anything else. But everything else is what we see today as a wish is going to be the norm.
Or the ones that we feel like are really far-fetched, like there's one person who's doing it and it's like, oh my gosh, can you believe they're trying that? Like, everybody's going to be doing it.
Everybody.
Yeah. What about you, Mert? Where do you see the AI, machine learning? How do you see that helping and aiding consumers in their home buying journey?
So a lot more interactivity is coming to the space, right? Now you don't need to know how to use AutoCAD or Photoshop or any of those complex software tools. You'll be able to type things and there's an AI in the background that understands what you want and it's giving you a design that reflects what you want. None of that is going to replace interior designers. Ultimately, there still needs to be a professional that is taking a final look at things and finalizing the process. But consumers will be able to and will want to do a lot of these things on their own. Will want to be part of that decision-making process, that design process, because design will get easier to them and they will be able to do it in so many other places when they are shopping for clothing or elsewhere, right? So they will look for the same experience with the home buying experience too. We now have actually, like currently we use our AI solutions primarily internally, but we are now creating versions of those that can go to a home builder's website and it's called AI Playground, where a home buyer will be able to sort of look at a particular home and then we'll be able to design the home using AI without even using any boring or any complex solution. It's going to be easy like that. So I definitely expect to see a lot more of that in the upcoming years.
I love that you call it the AI playground. It's so much fun to me. And, I was talking to Zillow. Zillow was here this morning and Kadra was talking about, like, we had a side conversation, like, we realize that some people are just on Zillow to shop. They just want to see what's out there. But through that, they're becoming so educated. And the consumer's becoming more educated about their neighborhood, about what they can truly afford, about what's happening with, like, they're so much more educated because they're just laying in bed scrolling through Zillow, right? The same thing, like, it's a playground, right? Like, what can AI teach me? That might be the new thing where everybody is there going like, maybe that's what I want for my room. Oh, no, let's try this. No, that's what I want for my room, right? And so all of these things, and like, HGTV came up, I think it was on Monday, a little bit about like how it's helped, but it's also hurt the process. And so the reality check that these types of things allow and bringing AI in, applying pricing to it online, having people shop online, price things out online, visualize things online, it allows for them to become so much more educated in the process. Whereas, let's just go back 10 years. If a consumer walked into the door, do you think they know how much a kitchen remodel was going to cost, or just finishing out their new kitchen in their home? Their ability to have a greater understanding about not only what it's going to cost, but what they want, is come so much further, so much faster, you know, and this comes with everything, but, you know, the technology adoption curve, we see it, and we're going faster and faster and faster and faster. Well, I guess for everybody else, we're going faster and faster and faster and faster and faster, right? Yeah. It's exponentially growing the ability for us to adopt these things.
Yep. Access to technology is becoming easier and easier. You know, interacting with complex solutions is becoming easier and easier. The interface is going to be definitely streamlined with AI.
Yeah, and it really comes down to removing the barriers of buying what consumers see. So, you know, I used to teach a real estate class in Texas to thousands of real estate agents about buying new. And one of the questions that I would oftentimes get, or frustrations that I would get from realtors, is they would walk inside of a model home, they would ask the salesperson, how much is this, how much is that? And the answer always was, well, that's a design feature. That's a design feature. You can't do that, right? So at K-Hovnanian, what we did, and you talked about how HGTV can be good or bad, sometimes bad, we used to joke about it was bad because it would give consumers an idea of something a builder couldn't do. So if you look through, and eventually you see a slide that'll show you, you know, with our farmhouse collection, we have wood designed walls. You know, we're being able to do the shiplap, we're being able to do focal point walls on headboards, we're doing fancy fireplaces up, we're doing woodwork on the ceilings. And so our model homes, there is nothing you see that you cannot own. Same thing with mine. You know, everybody walks in and says, man, I would love to own the furniture to this. But if you think of it, if you ask a true interior designer where they get their furniture, it's not most of the places generally the public can shop, right? So he put up a picture yesterday. One was a $30,000 master bedroom, one was an 11, and could you tell the difference? And one was, then he comes back and says, one's restoration hardware, and I don't even know where the other one was. It doesn't really matter, because people, for the most part, care less. But one was affordable, and one, for the most part, was not. But if you have that, and you can come in and you can scan a QR code, and you can shop the model you see, and then you can get ideas, you are now placemaking that consumer in that home. And the more you're doing that, the more they hate their current home. The more they hate their current home, the more they want to move to your home. So if you're just eliminating the barriers to purchase, then that's the key. But all of that comes down to, and I truly believe this too, is the salespeople have to learn how to sell and have to know how to sell what they have. And unfortunately, COVID was the worst thing that ever happened to a salesperson, because they forgot how to sell for the most part. And we need to re-educate them on how to sell.
But again, you're a salesperson that hates salespeople. Nobody wants to be sold. Right? You have to inspire. You have to assist. You have to help them visualize what their life could be, right? I was watching, I don't watch TV very often, but I was watching it in the hotel the other night. And I was watching this commercial, and I was like, ooh, it's either a luxury watch or a perfume commercial. And it was like, it was a perfume commercial. It was very aspirational, right? But they spend millions and millions of dollars to do that. And at no point do they even say, buy this. It's, I don't know, $100 a bottle. This is what your life could be, right? And so thinking about those types of conversations, using education, using inspiration in order to get the consumer to move a little bit further.
And creating this inspiration, as Chris was explaining, it is not that challenging. These are still images that they have on their website. Somebody can pull up their mobile phone and check this out on their phone. They don't need to have super strong internet connection, or they don't need to be at their desktop, right? It's so easy to consume all of this inspirational content and create it too with solutions like ours too, right? So we think that everything is becoming more accessible, and therefore it is just impossible to turn this trend around now. It's just going to happen.
Fantastic. Well, I think I saw a hand or two out there. We can get the mic to Bennett, since we've said your name 15 times. Hi, Bennett. This is Bennett from Mine.
Hi. Chris, question for you. Does a KHOV buyer in Dallas or across all of KHOV have a choice on options, custom options, or packages, or are they all packages?
They're moving, every new community moving forward is the looks palettes. So they don't have a choice.
Wow.
What's interesting though is that we have not come across the communities that I've done in Dallas-Fort Worth up to $1 million plus. We have not come across buyers that are unhappy with the palettes we've given. Now, our palettes in $1 million home are really, really nice. Like that's what you expect for $1 million, right? We're not trying to throw an IKEA product inside of $1 million house and ask $1 million for it. It has to be right for the consumer.
So are they the same 4 palettes, or do different regions have different palettes?
Across the entire country, it's the same looks, the same palettes, but there are different levels within the palettes.
And then follow up, I guess, is how hard was that transition internally for folks who were selling homes, marketing homes, buyers to understand, even like design center work?
It took a lot of work to get the sales team bought into why it's a positive, and we did lots and lots of training over it. But once they saw the consumer come in and they could actually give a price, and there was no more guessing. Like if you think about it, before it was, well, let's go ahead and do all of your structural items, and then the average buyer spends 8 to 10% at the design center. You may have a buyer that doesn't spend 8 to 10% and they spend 20%. Now all of a sudden it's out of their price point, and they come back to you and they said, the design center options sucked for the price. We need a bigger discount, or let's renegotiate. And this eliminates all of that. You are able to see it before you buy it. And that's not saying that it works for every buyer.
Yeah.
We are not for everybody, but we're finding that we're for more people than we're not.
Yeah.
Wow.
Any other questions from the audience? I can't see her on the podium. I think we have about 2 minutes left, and I have one more question. I got to ask my last question. Okay. I'm coming to you first, Mert. Since you're outside the industry, I'm going to call you outside the industry, is where your vision is coming from. If you could give one piece of advice to builders, one, like the driving force for the next 2 years, what would be your advice? And then I'm coming to you next, Chris.
Images. I am just surprised how little people are taking photos in the home builder industry compared to the other markets. I think photos are easy, they are cheap, they are, especially with the inventory homes that you have now, you can just capture them very easily. And they're also very easy to consume by the home buyers. They can check things on their phone, they can check things on Instagram, on their social media. So I think that's a very, very straightforward and easy thing to implement, and we definitely think that there is far more opportunities for using photos.
Photos. We've talked about photos this morning too.
Yeah.
And Chris, what about
I
you?
would say
Same question.
you need to accept the fact that the world is moving at a lot faster pace than most people are okay with, and that if you truly want to make your mark in your business or your industry, you need to become an early adapter, and you need to make your name for yourself and actually go after and stop making excuses for why it doesn't work. Figure out how to make it work, and you will become invaluable to your organization.
Stop making excuses. That's what Chris just told everybody.
Yep.
I love that though, because it's so easy to say it worked or it works, right? What is going to work in the future?
Yeah.
That's what we need to figure out, right? And it might not be the same thing for every builder. Like the builder A, builder B, and builder Z, you all might have different things that work for you. Maybe the pallets don't work for you. Maybe you decide you need 8 pallets instead of 4 pallets. Whatever it might be. Maybe you decide that you need 100 images instead of 20 images. I mean, whatever it might be, everybody's got to figure out their own secret sauce. But to do those things is really helpful. So I would like to give a big round of applause to these 2 lovely gentlemen. Thank you very much.